Hello. Today I will be featuring the Tier 7 Polish destroyer, the Blyskawica. I think it was supposed to be pronounced something like that, but I'll just call it Blyska. The Blyska has long been one of my favorite destroyers in the game, or well, it used to be back when you could still stealth fire. The matchmaking isn't really the nicest, it's pretty awkward to be honest. It's tier 7 to tier 9 with a ton of tier 8s in the mix as well. So not really your optimal matchmaking, to put it simply. First of all, I run Concealment Expert on the ship. I did run it in the past as well, so that hasn't changed. And that gives me a concealment of 6.8. No, yeah, 6.8. And that allows you to contest capture points somewhat okay. I usually go for capture points where there's islands in the Blyska. I don't like going for the open ones, because in the open ones, DDs that actually have really good concealment, like 5.8, like Benson's and such, they got such a big advantage. But in capture points with islands, like this one, you can kind of negate their advantage. Now you note that I'm not peeking around this corner at all. I'm not interested, because if I peek around the corner, then the enemy gunboat will have the advantage of having his team helping him shoot me. Whereas if I wait for him to peek, well, then I have the advantage of my team helping me out. The Blyska, of course, suffered probably the most out of all the ships when it comes to nerfing stealth fire. There were a couple of ships that really suffered from it, or well, not suffered, but were heavily impacted. And these are, for example, the Chapayev and the Blyska. And the Blyska was, of course, quite famous for its ability to stealth fire. It was one of the key roles it had, and it used to scale exceptionally well with captain perks. It still does, but it used to be a thing like every captain perk you got, the Blyska got even stronger and stronger and stronger. So the stealth firing has been removed, but that doesn't mean that you still can't use it as the hybrid it is. The Blyska is a bit more of a gunboat than a torpedo boat, but both of these characteristics are very strong, so that means that it's still a very strong hybrid ship. I am running the Victory camo, by the way, in case you were wondering, because I think it looks awesome on the ship. Well, it looks awesome on many ships, but this one especially looks really good. I know there was a Tashkent here, so I'm trying to see if I could sneak up and maybe drop my torps, because you are able to stealth torp in this ship, because you got 8 km torps, and as I said, with Concealment Expert, you got 6.8 concealment. This Iowa, in case he decides to push, he is moving so slowly though. Oh, Udaloi pops up. I think I'll go for dual purpose torps, chance of hitting the Udaloi, chance of hitting the Iowa. I shoot him, as soon as I wait for him to shoot back, now I know that he's spotted. How is his accuracy? Doesn't seem too bad. There's a risk 5 people are targeting me now. I kept an eye out on the detected meter. You might notice I'm running priority target, which is usually something you run on cruisers, but I actually switched it for the Blyska, because now when you can no longer stealth fire, it's important to know when you actually have to smoke up. And in this case, I had 5 people targeting me, and with this many battleships around, I thought it was prudent to pop my smoke now. The Udaloi ends up eating 2 torps as he was sailing. Well, as I said, they were dual purpose torps. They might hit the Iowa, they might hit that guy instead. I expect he might have torped, so I reverse to make sure that I won't eat any torps from the Udaloi. However, I make a miscalculation here. I think it's been long enough that if the Udaloi torped, the torps would already have arrived and I start accelerating, but they arrive now. So he actually sent them just before he died. So even though I expected this to be arriving and I was reversing for the purpose of dodging them, I ended up trying to be too smart, and I thought, hey, the torps have if he would have sent them, they would already have arrived, but he sent them at the very last moment, and that caught me off guard, and I ended up eating very unnecessary torps. So that obviously makes this game quite a lot harder. Not only am I against tier 8s and tier 9s, but I'm down to 5.6k health. On the bright side though, I did manage to get rid of the enemy Udaloi, which makes life a lot easier for our team, and they managed to get rid of another DD, so they have lost 2 DDs, which is a pretty big deal. My smoke is fading though, and I really don't feel like playing the gunboat role with this little health. In fact, I'm just gonna stop shooting here. I think this Atago is being pretty insanely aggressive and catches me off guard. So this is a problem. I Don't really have a good way of sailing out of this, so, well, honestly, we're just gonna have to YOLO here. Take full gunboats out and try to just harass this Atago as much as possible. I'm not really certain who this Atago is trying to kill. I think he's fighting the Mayoko, and he's just diving way too deep. I take another big hit, which is an issue, but my torps on the Gneiser now, well, I only land one actually. So not as much damage as I had hoped for, and at this point I am down to 3k health, and still got 3 people targeting me. On the bright side though, the Blyska is very fast, and I feel like I can still shoot because I got enough distance between me and the enemy ships at this point. When you get this far away, the great maneuverability and the small size of the Blyska combined with the speed makes it quite agile and quite easy to even play from this range. Problem is of course cruisers with railguns if they have any, but really even the shores and these are so far away that they're gonna struggle to land any shells, so I'll just happily ducka them as much as possible. I do constantly have 4 people targeting me, which is a bit uncomfortable because it means I have to constantly keep an eye out for any incoming shells. But even with this little health, I'm not really worried. The Tashkent is laying a smoke. I assume he wants to stealth fire or smoke fire himself. So I'm just going to slow down and park behind his smoke and use his smoke to my advantage. I only have 2 smokes myself, so I want to use them sparingly. The reason I have this range is of course because I use AFT. That's something that hasn't changed. I used it before the stealth fire nerf, I still prefer it after the stealth fire nerf, because even if you can't stealth fire, it doesn't mean that you can't use other people's smokes like I'm using here. You can't use terrain, you can't use your own smokes, all of these options still exist. So the additional range is still very useful, even if it means your detection range also goes up. Just trying to basically take pot shots at everything here. Pensacola is pushing into the cap, see if we can hit him to reset the cap a bit. 2 people target me now though, because he has moved around the smoke. I think it was the Gneiser actually sailing around down in the south that spotted me. They do, however, manage to secure A, and they have pushed pretty heavily into A. So that's a bit of a problem. I get spotted as well, which I don't like. And I get unspotted again. Interesting. At this point, I'm about to slip behind this island though, so I'm not too worried if some of the battleships decide to shoot me or not. And I think they have the Tashkent here and the Kagero on the other cap, so I don't really need to be too worried about any DDs. I'm still being randomly spotted. I assume it's the Tashkent that's seeing me. And at this point, well, we have a 2 cap advantage, so all I need to do is really delay them. Now, I could push in and try to torp them, but at this point it's probably safer to just use my guns mostly and just try to get some fires, harass them, slow them down as much as possible so that we can actually eventually secure this win, because, well, it is a random battle and I am playing solo, so a game is truly not won until, well, until you have 1,000 points or all the enemies are dead. Our Tashkent gets killed, and with him dying I decide, okay, maybe we should try to make use of these torps. I am so low that I'm so low HP at this point that the Blyska actually becomes a pretty decent torpedo boat. I obviously run Adrenaline Rush, and when you're this low HP, I've gained like 15-16% to the torpedo reload, so that means that my torpedoes will reload exceptionally fast. Since I know both the Kagero and the Tashkent are spotted on the minimap right now, I know that the only thing that can really screw with me as I try to sneak up on torp are fighter or spotter planes. But I have my smoke ready for that, and there's no one who can really spot. There's no radar or anything that can ruin my fun. The Shores almost gets into my spotting range. I gotta keep an eye on him, but the one I want to torp is of course the Iowa. That's their highest tier and strongest battleship they have right now. But he is still reversing, which kind of ruins my plan. Looks like he's stopping. He's going to change course. Still just sitting there. I'm trying to get those perfect torps. He's finally accelerating. And now I drop these torps. And you look at the reload. 56-second reload on my torps. 56 seconds. Less than a minute. That's something you would expect at maybe tier 5, not tier 7 torps. So with AR, and when you go low HP, the torpedoes become a real potent tool. The problem is, of course, that you have to land them. And that's not always that easily done, especially since this Iowa moves in some pretty weird ways. He stops, he changes, he stops, he accelerates, he reverses, he turns left-right completely strangely, which is of course not a bad thing to do if you're being torped by a DD, but it makes it very hard for me to land any sort of torps on him. It looks like this Tirpitz is however coming around the corner, so that makes him a pretty interesting target as well. You see my torps are still going out, only now are they fading, and literally 2 seconds after my torps fade, I can already launch the next volley. So Adrenaline Rush is one of those things that has helped the Blyska a lot. Well, it helps a lot of hybrid boats, gunboats and torpedo boats in general, but the Blyska is of course one that also has benefited a lot from this, because, well, you can use your torps significantly more often. Our lead looks pretty comfortable, but our team is dying pretty steadily. In fact, we have lost all other DDs except for me, and that's naturally a problem in domination games, so I have to make sure that I don't get myself killed stupidly. Tirpitz decides to randomly slow down and stop, which once again throws off my torps completely. So just because you have fast torp reload doesn't always work if the battleships aren't exactly working the way you want them to. Getting frustrated enough, I decide it's finally time to start dealing some actual damage here, and I pop one of my smokes. Now, Polish smokes don't last as long as US smokes. You have pretty much the Soviet smokes at your use, and that's not really surprising, because if you had US smokes then it would be quite overpowered. I try to shoot different parts of his hull to start 2 fires. Once I have 2 fires, I just switch to AP, because AP can deal some pretty good damage. I am a bit too low there, and it hits his armored hull. I try to aim a bit higher to make sure I get that base of the superstructure as my target, so my shells get that penetration damage. I don't see any point in shooting HE here, since I can't start any more fires, and the AP is pretty solid damage. He does, however, damage con, aka repair the fires, so I switch back to HE at this point, because, well, I want to be able to start fires on him very soon. Dropping torps once again. With the fast reload you can pretty much spam them as often as you want. Getting some pretty solid HE damage on him, but obviously I'm hoping to get those fires started. And I do get one. I adjust my aim, I want to hit the back of his ship now. If you want to start multiple fires, you have to hit spots on the ship that haven't already been set on fire. So that's why I'm adjusting my aim to the back of his ship now. It looks like my torps are not going to hit, but I do have 2 unrepairable fires on him. So he is pretty toast at this point. I switch to the other Bismarck instead and see if I could get some fires burning on him as well. The Blyska has always been a good fire starter, because, well, you don't run IFHE on it, because you don't need it, because you can just aim for the superstructure. My smoke runs out, so I just stop shooting because I don't want to get spotted. And it's always been a good fire starter, and it looks like this Tirpitz is about to burn out from my fires, and I do secure the kill. Drop some torps for the Gneiser now coming around the corner, or basically any of the ships back there, hoping to get some hits. This game still hasn't ended though, and I felt like we've had a pretty comfortable game, or, well, we had a comfortable lead, but looking at some of the chatter that's going on in all chat, they don't seem very happy. And looking at the rest of my cruisers, well, my cruisers are really in terrible positions. I don't know if you guys notice it, but all our battleships are in the caps, but our 3 cruisers are all in spawn. And I kind of understand it, because the enemy has so many battleships sitting around in the caps as well. But the problem is that the battleships kind of struggle to deal with the DDs, and some of those DDs have been getting a lot of kills, because, well, there's no cruisers around to actually melt them. My smoke is about to come up again, so that's why I'm not afraid to push in here. If I get spotted by a fighter plane or whatever, I can just smoke up if need be. Kinda wanna burn down both the Pensacola or the Iowa. I think the Pensacola is not that big of a threat, so I'm just gonna smoke up and start working on the Iowa instead, because he is once again the biggest threat they have. I switched to AP because Iowa has a lot of superstructure, and as you can see, the damage you can deal to superstructure is very significant, even when you use AP. A 3000 damage volley. As expected, the Pensacola explodes soon after, because, well, it is a very squishy cruiser, especially against battleships. I'm not too... the position I maintain is fairly risky, I would say, because, well, there's battleships all around me. I decide I go for the torps on the Gneiser now, and then I start shooting the Bismarck. The reason for this is I don't want to spook the guys now. You have to keep in mind, if you start shooting a battleship from your smoke, then not only do you alert them to your presence, but you also tend to spook them, and they will start avoiding and turning away. And well, if you have launched torps and you start firing, you're more than likely to make them avoid your own torps instead. And looking at the scoreboard, suddenly what looked like a very comfortable win for us has turned around, and we're actually down a ship. In fact, we're down all our battleships, and we just have these 2 cruisers that have horrible positioning in our base, and we have 1 Bismarck who's surrounded at B. So this is of course not the best possible situation. The Mayoko is very mad at our battleships, but I don't think really our... this is one of those cases... Wow, my torps ran out just before hitting that guy. This is one of those cases where I don't actually think our battleships is as much to blame, but more the fact that our cruisers are basically farming damage in our spawn instead of helping them against the DDs. I decide to drop torps on the Gneisenau. The Bismarck is at this point out of range, and I think I have to go secure A, because if the Tashkent goes in cap C and this Bismarck caps B, then we're about to lose all the caps, and there's only 3 minutes left. And at this point we're down to 3 versus 5. So I'm gonna have to secure this win for us with 3000 HP. Okay, the chat is getting... my team chat is very upset and mad at this point. The Iowa backs up, but he's giving me a lot of broadside. Well, it doesn't matter, I have HE loaded, so broadside or not does not matter. I make sure to aim for the superstructure, of course, because I don't want my shells shattering on his hull. This kill finishes off the Iowa, and I hug the island to make sure I can't be shot from the Gneisenau behind me. And I launched the preemptive torps on the Gneisenau, and well, he eats 3 of them and gets killed, which gives me the Kraken. And at this point we have so many points that it's very hard for my team to throw, even if the 2 cruisers on my team are still in very awkward positions. Tashkent, though, my team is very happy about this, since what they thought was going to be a thrown game is still salvaged at this point. Thanks to the fast torpedo reload, I just spam some more towards Bismarck, and I go and secure the cap, because with the Iowa dead, and I think the Bismarck went to C as well, we're going to be ticking points the entire time through B, and they have no one to contest B at this point. So this is pretty much a guaranteed 1 game, unless one of my cruisers suddenly die. But considering how passively they've been playing, I think it's unlikely that either will die at this point. They do camp C, but I'm just gonna sit here and hold A, and honestly I don't mind the additional XP I might get from capping A either. Don't die, the Udalai tells me. I don't think I need too much encouragement on that matter, or although he could be talking to the cruisers. Still though, this I thought was a pretty good game, because it showed even though you've lost the stealth fire, that doesn't mean that you're no longer a gunboat. Like, even when I was low HP, I wasn't too worried about just gunning them down while sailing around, and this was against up-tiered as well. Oh, am I gonna get the cap? No, sadly game ends before I can get the cap, so I don't get the nice bonus XP. Still though, almost 900k credits, almost 10k XP, 167,000 damage, and the Kraken. And looking at the team score, well, the tier 7 topped the scoreboard, which is of course always satisfying. It could have been a bit better if I'd gotten the cap at the end, but well, beggars can't be choosers. Getting the win at this point was at least nice. The 2 cruisers in the spawn, well, honestly this was more like a solo warrior than anything else, it felt like, because they didn't really achieve much running around in our spawn, and just, I don't know what they were doing, but that's the way it goes in random battles. As I said earlier in this game, the game isn't won until you have 1,000 points or the enemy team is dead. Looking at the detailed report, only 700,000 potential damage, and this is mostly because I ate the torpedo early on in the game. Because I potatoed and ate that torp, I had to play a lot safer than I usually can. You can still play the ship very much like a gunboat, you just have to pay attention to who's shooting you and dodging incoming fire. But that's why I also recommend priority target, so you know when it's time to smoke and disengage when you start having too many people targeting you at once. Overall though, main battery damage 65,000, fires almost a wither, so in pure gun damage I did over 120k damage, and in fact my torps only did 44,000. So this is the Blyska is still foremost a gunboat. It is a hybrid because of the torps, the stealth torping capability, but most of your damage will absolutely still come from your very strong Polish guns. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build for this ship. Alright, starting off, we of course have the modules. Not much to talk about. Premium, I would say priority-wise, get premium smoke, followed by premium repair, followed by premium speed boost. Upgrade-wise, main armaments mod 1, aiming system mod 1. There's no real point getting the AA guns because your AA is pretty damn pitiful, and you don't need a turret traverse because your turret traverse is already so great. Slot the engine boost mod if you have it. It's a fantastic, increases speed boost by 50%, very much worth it. If you don't have one, go for the propulsion mod. And finally, acceleration. So, well, if you see torps coming your way, you can hopefully dodge them and not eat them the way I did. In general though, usually the rudder shift you have is more than enough to be able to slot this, especially with the new playstyle where you sit a lot in the smokes and shoot from your smokes. Being able to accelerate quickly is very important. Captain perks wise, I have made some changes. First of all, priority target. So you can see how many people are actually focusing you. Last stand, absolute must-have. Survivability expert, you want the tankiness. And then you follow it up first with concealment expert, followed by AFT for the additional range. Then you increase your fire chance. And at this point, for the last 2 points, you get adrenaline rush because it's such a fantastic additional damage booster. In which order you take this, you might get adrenaline rush before fire chance or the other way around. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately though, this 19-point build is the strongest build I have so far managed to make work ever since they removed the stealth fire. And honestly, I still think the Blyska is a very strong ship and a very fun ship. You can no longer stealth fire like you used to be able to, but that doesn't mean that the ship is all of a sudden weak or unplayable by any means. It's still a very strong DD and it's still very fun to play. Anyway, that was all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.